Welcome, everybody. This is Papa Deca. We are live on Beyond the Barricade. And tonight I got two very special guests. I'm so excited tonight. This is probably one of the biggest shows, definitely in my career, doing these YouTubes. But first, before we head on into our guests, let me go over. It is Psycho Month for me. We got Psycho Circus coming up. I've got a bunch of participants from NYWC coming on the show. We had Joey Conway. We have more coming. More information will be released. I know Anthrax will be here later on this week, so stay tuned for that. I will also be, and tickets went on sale actually, for Victory Pro Wrestling's next show, Blood, Sweat, and 17 Years. Make sure you go to victoryprowrestling.com to get your tickets right here in Long Island, New York. You won't want to miss the anniversary show. It's always special. We got a new champion, Eric James is our new champion. And we are so excited for that show. If you want to sponsor your favorite wrestler, make sure you go to victoryprowrestling.com. They are taking sponsorship packages as well. But don't forget to get your tickets. I'm so nervous tonight. I can't believe it. Here we go. I will be at the big horror event. There I am. March 11th, right here in Queens, New York. I'll be joined by Robbie Rebel, who will also join me at Icons of Wrestling in Philly, the Spring Fling. Make sure you come to that as well. And now I'm going to be bringing my first guest on. I'm going to say he is the wrestling super promoter. Right, Herb? I know you're listening. Herb Simmons, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Papa? Appreciate the invite. Not the super promoter, just I tell everybody if I ever write a book, it's going to be called The Man, the Myth, the Fool.
That is awesome. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you coming on, and I am ready to go. Are you ready?
I'm all ready. I'm buckled in and ready to take a ride.
All right. Let's start off with, how did you begin your wrestling career?
Well, I get that question asked all the time. This is my 50th year promoting, and I can't tell you how many times I've been asked that question, but I got involved in it as a fan, just like anybody out there now that's in the business. Got hooked on it.
That's how we all start.
My mother and I were, not only was she my dear, lovely mother, we had a bond with professional wrestling, and every week we never missed it. She always loved the good guys, and I was kind of always either or, back in the day, the Bruisers and the Johnny Valentines, the Fritz von Erichs, and Baron von Raschke. That was, it was just a bond that we had. And like I said, I grew up watching it. And then one of the greatest thrills of my life is when I got to be good friends with my dear late friend Larry Matasek, who was the young man who got to sit underneath the learning tree of the late great Sam Muchnick, who was the NWA president for over 41 years. Larry started working with him when he was 16 years old. Didn't even have a driver's license yet.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
All right, let's go on to the next question. So, how did the Bruiser Brody Memorial happen? I'm going to bring up that picture up real quick of you and Bruiser. There you are.
Yeah, you're dating back there to about 1983, 84. That's a picture that was taken at the Belclair Fairgrounds, where I just had a show this last Saturday night. It's one of the first places that we brought Bruiser Brody into, which kind of another one of those great moments of my career. I got to meet Bruiser Brody through Larry Matasek and Sam Muchnick, and it was an awesome time of my life that I thought, man, there's Santa Claus and then there's Bruiser Brody. And,
larger than life.
For me to bring somebody like Bruiser Brody or King Kong Brody, whatever area he would be working in, whatever name he would go by. But I always tell people I had the honor of calling him either one of them, but my biggest thrill of it was to call him my friend. And
that's awesome.
He was, he was the type of guy that anytime I called him or Larry would call him for a show, he'd show up, And the real quick story was my first time I ever booked him was I had several other promoters back then call and tell me I was nuts, I was crazy because he would stand me up. He was good for that, and boy, I got worried because I didn't know him, so I'd call Larry and say, "Hey, so and so's called me. Dick the Bruisers told me he stood him up, and blah blah blah." And he said, "Herb, he'll be there." And so we were at that Belle Claire Fairgrounds I was talking about, just where we were this last Saturday night. Over 2,000 people inside the building waiting for him, and that chant of Brody, Brody, Brody. And my wife, bless her, she was in there trying to keep peace, and I'm outside walking around the parking lot because it's about 10 minutes before bell time, and I can't get Larry on the old cell phones we had back then. We came in a big old bag. They called them the bag phones.
Right.
And he wouldn't answer the phone, and it got to be bell time. And my wife come out the side door of the exposition hall and said, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "What are we going to do? You're going to have to go back in there and tell him he's not here." And about that time, I looked out at the edge of the roadway, and through the gates come this car. And I thought, as it got closer, I said, "Boy, that looks like Larry's car." And when he pulled up underneath the canopy, I'll never forget it. It's just like I'm seeing it now. The big man rolled out from the passenger side, had his pair of shorts on and some flip flops, and had his hair back and a ponytail. And he walked up to me and stuck his hand out, and he said, "I bet you didn't think I was coming, did you, big boy?" And no, I wasn't even worried about it.
Right.
From that moment on, I mean, every time I ever called him, or Larry would say, "Hey, Herb's got a show." If he was available, he was coming to us, and had some great shows with him. And then he'd show up at the shows, and he'd always say, "What do you want tonight?" And I'm thinking, here's a guy that's larger than life asking me, this promoter of little Podunk in Illinois here, what I want. I just say, "I'll send him home happy." And boy, there was a night he didn't do that.
That is a great story. So let's go on to our next guest who is joining us. I'm very excited about this, Herb.
She's more interested than me, I can tell you.
I'm sure. Let us bring forward Barbara Goodish. How are you?
Well, how are you? I guess I call you Papa.
Yeah, you call me Papa. As my son calls me, Papa D.
Papa D.
For short. There's already another Papa D out there, so I had to add the rest of it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for having me on. And as I said, it's great to see Herb. No, Herb's wrong. He is definitely more interesting than what I am. He's got stories. You wouldn't believe some of his stories that he has. I'm still learning more things.
I'm sure he does. Hopefully we can get it some later on tonight. But my first question for you is, how did you and Bruiser meet?
Well, I happened to be just working in a hotel in Sydney, Australia. And it just happened to be a hotel where all the boys would be staying, the ones that were doing the circuit, or the Americans that were doing the circuit, going over to Australia and New Zealand, because they would be over there working. And I just happened to be working in the hotel, and all the boys, we call them the boys, I should the wrestlers, all the boys would be staying there. Now you're talking about from Andre the Giant, Don Morocco, Rick Martel. I mean, a lot of them. I had midgets, I had giants, Frank, Killer Cal Krupp, who's also passed, J.J. Dillon, Tony Guerrero. I could go on and on, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And so you have to remember, like you said, like Herb was saying, these were the days before the cell phones. These were the days before internet.
Right.
So when the boys would come over, they would have to leave their families behind. And the only communication was kind of, in the old days, you wrote letters, you sent photos, and you wrote letters, because it was much too expensive to even make a international phone call back in those days. So I would get the mail, and I'd take it out and I'd give it out to them, and they'd show me pictures of their families and talk about at home and everything. So they were more like my brothers, I think. I was like a big sister, that, someone that they felt comfortable talking to. So this one night I just happened to be working the front desk, and somebody didn't turn up, so they asked me if I would do the 3 to 11. I went, well, okay, I was usually home by then. So at 11 o'clock, they were just pulling up from one of their matches. There was a couple of, taxis pulling up and they were all getting out. And then one of them asked, well, why don't you getting off? What? My boss was an American gentleman and he had another piano bar up the street. It was called the Bourbon and Beef. So they said, well, look, you just finished work. Why don't you just come up and, have a drink with us? And I said, well, okay, that sounds good. When you work late, it's not like you can go straight home. It's like 11 o'clock is like 5 o'clock.
I know how that feels.
So it just so happened that Frank was there and we had a big table. I think there's 12 of us or something. I mean, you're talking about between giants and midgets. I mean, this was, quite something. But all of a sudden, one by one, they started to leave. They would say, well, yeah, we'll be back. And then all of a sudden, there was 3 of us. There was Frank, me, and Killer Carl Crump.
Uh-huh.
And then Kyle gets up and leaves and doesn't come back. And what do you think that left? Just me and Frank.
That's right.
Well, as Herb knows, he was a worker. I got worked from the very beginning because he didn't know how to ask me out or to get me by myself.
Right.
So he said to the boys, hey, let's invite her up. Maybe she'll come up and then all of you just disappear. So he worked me. He worked me from the
and nobody was going to tell him no.
No.
That's right. I would tell him no. I'm like, hey, yo, listen, I'm out.
Yeah. So that's kind of, he was probably kicking them under the table and that.
Right.
I don't know.
That's a great story.
So that's
awesome.
how we became. And if like in life, if it's not a date or if it's not anything, because let's face it, when you remember, you go on a date, you try to put your best foot forward. You're not always who you are. Whereas I was who I was. I mean, it was like, there was nothing because there was no pressure. It was no date. It was just being with a bunch of friends.
Absolutely.
And being yourself. So I think, with being yourself, they know who you are from the very beginning because there is no act or anything.
No acting, right.
Yeah. So that's kind of, and he worked ever since. I mean, I know Herb can tell you probably plenty of stories off some of his work.
Yeah, he was a worker, but I tell you what, she was his biggest catch, I can tell you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
We got some quick hellos for you guys. It's Aaron.
Hi, Aaron. Yeah, Aaron's one of our good followers. He follows anything SICW does, and he sent me a message earlier and said, "Good luck tonight. I hope you have a good time." So thanks, Aaron.
I think you're having a good time, Herb.
Oh, it's always a good time. Anytime I can be with Barbara, whether it's on a podcast or just talking on the phone, because we have that bond. And I think she'll tell you the Bruiser Brody Memorial, something that we, we're going to continue to do. I mean, how many years has it been now? 1988,
I was just going to say, and it's just amazing, as Herb was saying, because I'll get up in the ring and I'll give the trophy, or anytime I talk, and then they all start just chanting, Brody, Brody, Brody. I mean, it's just amazing.
It's amazing. Absolutely.
That how long after he has left us, that I would say he's probably more popular, more famous today than what he was in 1988 when he left us, just because of YouTube and because of people like Herb, who have kept his memory alive by doing this memorial show every year. It's, Herb doesn't know. I think he really doesn't know what exactly that means to me. It's
let him know, because that's going to be my next question. What does the Bruiser Brody Memorial mean to you?
Exactly. I led right into that. Yeah,
you did. You did let right into it. It's like we rehearsed it or something.
Great minds. See, great minds. And no, it's like I was just saying, he has no idea that just what this means. Every year to go to St. Louis, and there's people there that have been there from the very beginning that I see, of the fans that Herb has, and just the way that he does. Herb is probably one of the few people out there that still keeps it old school, and I think that's what they like, how they've picked up on Frank and a lot of Herb's events, is it's old school wrestling. It tells a story. It works. It's not like some of the modern wrestling that we, as Herb knows, today.
Right.
And it brings my heart when I'm there every year, just to see the people and see the people that have been there from the very beginning, Gary and Dennis, and there's a whole lot of people that are still working there today than what they were, back in that time. And it's like I just said before you even asked the question.
Right.
Herb has no idea that how good it makes me feel and how good my heart is every time that he does this in memory of Frank. And as I said, it used to be with Larry when Larry was with us and that.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the two people. There's only a few people that have been with me from the very, very beginning of when Frank left us. And that's been Herb and Larry and Stan Hansen. Stan Hansen has always, he's always been there too.
Another
and
tough
I'm also
guy.
looking forward. Hey, Stan is going to be next May. I'm so looking forward to seeing Stan as well.
I figured that day that I posted the picture of him, it wasn't long, and I saw you hitting on the post, and I knew that was going to make you feel good, because when I got a hold of him, I said, come on, you got to be in here because Barbara's going to be here again. And he said, oh, I've already been there. And I said, don't care. I want you back.
Good.
And another one that's really, JJ's going to be there. There's another one that I've known for over 40 years from Australia. JJ was in Australia when I met Frank. JJ's going to be there. And another one too, Herb, is the bushwhacker, Luke.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, Luke's going to be there. Now I got a comment.
Hey, Papa, can I interrupt you just a minute? Sure. Hey, Barbara, I got somebody somebody wants to say hi to you.
Okay. Oh, mwah, mwah, mwah. Love yourself.
That's my wife. If I didn't put her on there, I'd be in trouble. You know what they say, Papa, the happy wife, happy life.
Happy life, yeah. My wife wasn't happy, so she left me.
Oh, no.
What are you gonna do? I gotta go to work. You know what I'm saying? I gotta work.
I'm telling you. Yeah.
We got a great comment here.
Okay.
Serena says, who's also my booker and books some of my guests, Herb is introducing Bruiser Brody to a new generation of fans who may not have heard of Bruiser Brody. Definitely a great way to keep his memory alive. Thank you, Serena.
Thank you, Serena. Yes, and that's what we try to do. I mean, it's amazing, as Barbara said, we have fans that show up with a mixture of the older followers. And when we start talking about the Bruiser Brody and we show some of his old tapes that we have, and it's kind of like, wow, that guy's a monster. Well, yeah,
man, he goes around swinging that chain and everything.
yeah, sure did.
Let's bring up the poster real quick. Look at all the celebrities coming.
I know. Can you? Oh my gosh, mean. And Jerry Briscoe and his son Wes too is coming. I'm so looking forward to seeing both of them again. Awesome. And I'm looking forward to meeting the Honky Tonk. I haven't met. Is it the Honky Tonk?
Is the Honky Tonk there?
No, he's not on yet. That's not an updated poster, but
okay.
There's a few of them that's been added recently. And today I got calls from some more people wanting to bring in different people. So. I think we're right about 32 legends and special guests right now. And this is something that, I said being my 50th year, I was just going to do a little small one because I've never done one this large. I said, well, I'll bring in 6 or so of the guys and get them in here. And boy, it's just growed legs and is taken off,
Wow, that's amazing.
And John Nord. I'm looking forward to seeing John again because these are people that Frank used to talk to me about way back in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. All right, let's go into the. Yeah,
go ahead,
Barbara.
Go to you real quick. When you were talking about him doing the chain.
Yeah.
Quick story. You know how these stories end up. He used to come back from Japan and he'd bring videos so he could see. He kind of researched his videos to see how they were, and he would either be saying, well, this is bad, or this is good, this is. So, because he used it as a business. He did it as a business like anybody that goes to work every day and wants to get ahead. Right. But I used to, when he showed me, I was so worried. And I said, you can't be swinging that chain. I said, what have you hit somebody? I mean, he looked at me, as Herb knows that look that he has sometimes. He looked at me with that look and said, Barbara, I'm 6'5". My hand is up here. I'm swinging this chain. They're down there. You think I'm going to hit somebody?
That's right. That's right.
Well, Barbara, I don't know if I ever told you the story. You know Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Yeah.
And he'd bring the big 2x4 out to the ring with him. Frank was the one who gave him that idea. They were in a show one night, and when Jim was first starting out, and Frank told him, he said, you got to get yourself a prop. He said, you got to get known for something. And there was a 2x4 laying in the locker room where they were at, and that's how that 2x4 and Jim Duggan got to be married together. So
wow, that's a great story. Yeah,
I know it's a great story, and I saw Jim. I met Jim and his wife for the first time in Charlotte. I think it was a couple of years ago. He came running over to me and he said, I just want to thank you. I just want to tell you. And he said, I owe my career to Frank.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because of the gimmick. And that's the background story of how that all became about.
That's awesome. How did Frank like being in St. Louis?
He loved it. He loved St. Louis. He thought that was probably one of his best territories, because he'd always say, I'm going to St. Louis. I can relax. I'm with people I trust and who trust me. And no pressure. Whereas, as Herb can probably tell some stories, some of the other territories was always, I can't, Herb?
Yeah. Yeah, he felt, it was a home away from home. Back in the day, I had a bar and restaurant, and the upstairs part of it we had named Brody Lounge. And so anytime he was in the St. Louis area, was a place he could come and relax, as Barbara said. Larry Mattisek could be there, a lot of his fans and that he could trust. And it was just a nice place for him to be able to relax and not have to worry about anything. And because, a guy his size, you get him into a place where there's alcohol being served, there's always one of those guys that want to try to take on the big guy. And he knew I wasn't going to not allow any of that stuff. So I'd keep him secluded upstairs, and only the VIP people got to come in.
Oh, awesome. Little Jamie says hello.
Hey, little Jamie. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, that's good. Very good.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I saw another little post from Darla. It says, hi, Barb and Herb. I can't wait to see you both. Do you know Darla?
There we go. There it is.
Do we know Darla?
Woohoo, Darla.
Speaking of Darla, she gets an award on May 13th. She gets the Sam Muchnick Award this year.
Okay.
Quick story of that, Papa. Her first wrestling match she attended was in 1959 when her father was holding her in his arms when Pat O'Connor took on Dick Hutton for the NWA title. And when Pat won the title, her father with her in his arms running around ringside. So that you talk about a wrestling fan, and she has not missed a beat since 1959. I'm telling you. So, this year we started the Sam Muchnick Award last year, and of course, my dear lovely friend Barbara, we presented that with her last year because. And before I go any further, you were talking about St. Louis, Barbara. Tell them the story about when Frank come to St. Louis when Jeffrey was being born.
Oh my gosh, this was it. I was in the process of Jeff being ready to,
deliver.
Have Jeff. I want to put a nice thing.
You were in the hospital. Yeah.
That's right.
And he'd left that morning. Well, I was fine. I'd gone to the doctor. The doctor said, you're fine. Come back next week. Well, he left for St. Louis or Kansas City. I think he was in the night before. He was in Kansas City the night. I took him to the airport. He went to Kansas City. I think I went and had a doctor's appointment. They told me, yep, you're fine. We'll see you next week. Well, that night he was in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. I started, I won't go into all the stuff, and I ended up the next morning in the, that must have been a Thursday, because it was Friday night. They were in St. Louis.
St. Louis.
It was Friday, so it was Thursday night. Thursday, he was in Kansas City, and then Friday, I ended up in the hospital 9:00 on Friday morning. my neighbor said, "No, you're ready, go."
Right.
Jeff was born about an hour after I got to the hospital. I was lucky. And then I left a message in St. Louis that I think my neighbor said, "I'm going to call wherever he's going to be staying. I'm going to leave a message." So when Frank got to the hotel that day, got the message that he was a father. He had had a son. A son was born to him.
Right.
Then when he went to the show, Sam, he must have told Sam and you and whatever. Sam called him in and said, "What are you doing, right? What are you doing here? You need to get on a plane and go home." But I'm working that night.
Oh, no.
Family is more important. So he got on the plane. He did what Sam said. Thank you, Sam. Rest in peace. You know, so
There's
he
Sam
got
back
on the plane.
there.
Yeah, he came. As I said,
It is.
he got to the hospital about 10 o'clock that night and saw his son that night at 10 o'clock. And then, of course, he had to leave the next day again, but at least I had him one night. And I had to stay in hospital more because I had no one to take me home. And they said, "Well, you can go
Oh,
home."
no.
No. I have to wait till my husband gets home.
He'll be back in a few days. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I have to stay here a little extra.
Darla says she's so honored to be receiving the Sam Nick Award. I love Sam and I love St. Louis wrestling. My loves.
Yeah.
Thank you, Darla.
We love our Darla.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, let's go into the next question. Tell me about the documentary Head Over Heels. How did this come about?
That's a good story. Before we start over, let's start about the Wrestling at the Chase book. About 23, 24 years ago.
That was my next question. But
our late friend Larry Matisek wrote a book called Wrestling at the Chase, and I've had the honor of helping him with that. And then so here, recently, a year or so ago, a publishing company had called me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in helping our author-writer do a book on Wrestling at the Chase?" And I said, "No, I've already done that. And it's a good book." And they said, "Well, would you at least talk with him?" The gentleman's name was Ed Wheatley. So I met with him. And when Ed come over and saw the collection of memorabilia that I have, he just was like, "Wow, you talk about Christmas time." So he convinced me, and Larry, it kind of was a marriage made together because Larry had always talked about one of the books he wanted to do would be a coffee table book full of pictures and everything. And so Ed went to work on that. I provided him with probably 80% of the photos that are in the book. And it was a big hit, the Wrestling at the Chase book. And all along that was going on, he had the idea, because I told him that Larry and I had always wanted to talk about going back to the Chase Park Plaza Hotel, where the Corsan room where Wrestling at the Chase started in 1959. Lo and behold, the local PBS station here in St. Louis picked up on the idea and jumped on with, because St. Louis wrestling, it was a hotbed. And Wrestling at the Chase outdrew any other programming that they had. Other than the St. Louis Cardinals, they were the top. And so he went to work on the Head Over Heels, and it's been a big hit. So big, I think they're even talking about maybe expanding on that a little bit. So, to this day, you walk down the streets of St. Louis and ask them about Wrestling at the Chase, somebody's always got a story about it. So, but I think that's all because of what Larry did with his first book. And then along come Barbara, they did the Bruiser Brody book, and Larry wrote 3 or 4 other ones. And so we're definitely keeping the legacy and the history of Wrestling at the Chase in St. Louis alive.
Right. Okay. Barbara, how did how would you think that Bruiser would feel about inspiring all these wrestling legends now, such as a Mick Foley?
Well,
How do you think? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I know that Mick has talked to me about. I've never met Mick, but he said a lot of these people, they all remember Frank.
Right.
And is it the grave? Was it the grave? What was it? The grave digger?
Undertaker?
No, the Undertaker. That's right, the Undertaker. He he talked about his first match with Brody at one point.
Yeah, so he talks about that. So a lot of these people, they do seem to remember him and do seem to, look up to him, because I go to these events and a lot of them will be telling me stories. A lot of the old legends will be telling me stories, like J.J. Dillon too.
Bruiser and Brody.
So it's I think, as you said, he has totally left a legacy, and he will be remembered, because it's just amazing that and as you know, we're getting shorter and shorter. We're losing so many every year too, which is, we just lost Lanny, and
Yes.
a lot of them now. So I appreciate when they do come and they tell me stories, and especially now, like I said, with this Powtown Wrestling, and you've got Greg Gagne, you've got Magnum TA, and you have all like the Luthezers and all of the ones, all the Von Erichs. So I think it's amazing about how many people, and not even to go back on the legends now. What really gets to me is when I go to these events like Herb, and then sometimes they'll take me into some of these other ones. Like we have the CAC, the Cauliflower Alley Club, which I know Herb can expand on that too, which is a great organization, which helps these people. Because wrestling, we have no benefits. There's no medical, there's no pensions, there's no nothing. And a lot of people get into a really bad situation of life. Right. As we get older and things. So the CAC is such a wonderful organization, because there's somewhere that they can actually go and get a little bit of help. And I think I've gone completely off what the original question was.
No, you're good. You're good.
But as I was saying, when I go to these events and I have these, I call them kids, because they're probably in their 20s and early 30s, and they will tell me all about Frank. And, because when the first time when I asked, well, how old are you? These were fans that weren't even born in 1988. Right. And they know all about them, and they are watching the YouTubes, and and they have tattoos of him. They show me tattoos on their arm, on their back, especially the one in St. Louis. What was it, Randy, I think?
Yeah.
That has this huge tattoo. So that's what I said. It's like, how do you know about him? Oh, we got your book and we watch YouTube. And as I said, and this is what I think, that the old school wrestling always live on, because it's something that they remember. Right. And now, as I said, I've gone all the way back.
Yeah. Papa, to expand on that a little bit, a question about Frank, why people, I think, look up to him and still remember him, is because a lot of the guys like the Mick Foleys and the Undertakers and the Jim Duggans and them looked up to him because he was that rebel. He was the one that stuck up for the business. He's the one that would go in there and sit down and argue with the promoter and say, nope, I'm not going to let you use me and abuse me. And if you don't like it, I'll go someplace else. I was fortunate. I was the first independent promoter out there that Frank started working for back in the day. Larry Matisek brought him in, as I said, and he gave me an education that I could never get from anybody else on how to work with the talent when you were calling them and saying, hey, I got a show, I need this. And, somebody like Abdullah the Butcher, who could be a handful, as Barbara knows. But all I had to do is, my first encounter with him was, and Frank was sitting there in the same room when I was negotiating with him on the telephone, and he didn't know that, but he was being stubborn until I mentioned Frank's name, and it was like, oh, well, when do you need me, boss? When do you need me? But they knew that if they were coming in with Bruiser Brody, that it was going to be a good show. They were going to have a good payday, and he took care of the people that he worked with. So he was just well respected amongst the majority of the boys.
Yeah, right. Because he knew. So going in with Herb and Larry and St. Louis and Sam, and I won't say the word is out, but he knew exactly, like I said before, but there was no BS involved. Everything was upboard. If Herb and them said anything, it was going to be what it is. Like sometimes some of the other promoters would be they would say different things and then they try to change it all around, or they, as Herb knows.
Yeah.
But yeah, see, that was the difference why Herb is so respected in this business by so many of the people, because he's one of the few upfront guys that you're ever going to find.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to give you a big hug when I see you. But again, another lesson learned from those three gentlemen right there. Sam, a real quick story. My first encounter with Sam Muchnick, and you got to keep in mind, he was that president of the NWA for over 41 years off and on. And when Larry first took me to dinner with him one night, I didn't know what to expect. You talk about nervous. I mean, here I'm sitting with God. I mean, I'm literally, this is the guy who everybody in the wrestling business around the globe relied upon to be the mediator, the peacekeeper. He said who did what and when and who controlled the NWA title. And we're sitting there and we're having a steak, and I'm sitting to the one side of him, Larry's sitting across the table, and he says, Larry tells me you want to get a little bit deeper into this business. And I said, well, yeah. And I said, not as a worker. I got a little bit more smarts. I don't want to get out there and get hurt,
Yeah, right.
And he's sitting there with his steak knife, cutting his steak up. And I'm thinking, I'd heard all these horror stories about how this business can be and, everything going on. I thought, man, I hope I ain't making this guy mad. And he took that steak knife and he said, I'll tell you what. He's pointed that steak knife to his ear. He says, you keep these open, pointed to his lips and says, and keep this shut, you'll go a long way in this business. And he said, if you treat the boys right, they'll treat you right. And here 50 years later, every word of that is come true. I can speak and I can argue and I'll BS with all of them. And, but I respect the boys for what they go out there and do. And I think that's why, like Barbara said, when we have a show like we're doing again, coming up in May, when you can assemble that kind of legends and special guests, it says a lot for what we've done over 50 years, I think.
Absolutely. Well, is this event going to be streamed?
No, not yet. I'm sure. Well, it may be. I mean, we've got some, Teddy Long. I'm sure Teddy.
Yes.
Him and Mac Davis are coming in with their road trip, and Jerry Briscoe's being inducted into the St. Louis Wrestling Hall of Fame that night, and of course JBL is going to be there to do that with him. And then I was asked to do the honors of inducting J.J. Dillon into the St. Louis Hall of Fame, which that's the Hall of Fame that Larry Matisek, myself, and Nick Reddenauer, my senior referee, started several years ago. And it's we like to say it's a legitimate Hall of Fame. There's no chauffeurs in it or people like that, the limousine drivers. These are all guys from Sam Muchnick to the Johnny Valentines, Gene Kaniskis, the Luthezes, you name it. The boys who made and ladies who made St. Louis what it was are I think we're up to 43 people in this Hall of Fame now.
Okay. So for Barbara, how does the St. Louis Memorial differ from some of the other memorials that you've been at?
Well, I don't think they're really memorials. I think Herb's is the only true memorial. The other ones they give out awards. They give, they give out different awards. It's not like a show just for Bruiser Brody. He is just, when they take me up, it's usually just for like, he gets an award, from like the Cauliflower Alley Club, then from the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame when it was up in New York, and different things like that. So it's more like these small shows that will just give an award out. But no, the only show that's devoted as a memorial is Herb's show.
Okay.
Well, and what this show will consist of is, it'll be a fan fest. We'll start at 10 o'clock in the morning and run all day. But, we'll have a question and answer session. Jimmy Hart, the Mouth of the South, is going to be there. And guys like that who have great stories.
There he is.
Yeah.
He's eating White Castle with you.
That's a man. He's a White Castle eater, and but you talk about a guy who is just full of vim and vigor. I mean, he always wants to come in a day early, and he'll go to the arena with you and help set up chairs, do whatever you want. And everybody says I got a lot of energy, but I have no way. He's that bunny that just never wears out. But so when you got guys like that. We'll have that. We'll have that question answer. We'll have the Hall of Fame induction, and of course that night we have the big Bruiser Brody Memorial, which will end it with a battle royal, and Barbara will present the winner of the battle royal, that big beautiful trophy cup, and
Right.
we'll give the Sam Muchnick Award that night. It's going to be a fun, full day. We've kept it feasible for our fans because that's what I said from the get-go. I want it to be very fan friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully they'll come out. We've got people from Canada that's already booked their flights and their hotel, and
Wow.
From Texas, I just had one yesterday book a flight. So hope they come. If not, I'll have to call you and ask you for a loan.
First, I need a sponsor, Herb.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about. Barbara, did Bruiser ever talk about the best match he's had and who that best opponent would be?
I think one of the best matches he had was one of the few matches that I actually I witnessed, which I didn't really go to a lot of the matches because I was at home looking after the house and my son. So right back at St. Louis again. This was a match that he went 1 hour with Ric Flair. The Japanese were over there filming, and I think people were shocked that he could go 1 hour, one whole hour with Ric Flair. So I know a lot of people talk to me about that matches because I think it's a match that a lot of people remember because it showed him that he was more than just this heel going out, beating up people, that he could actually wrestle. And that's what, like, the Japan was a little different wrestling than what it was in the States. Right. So here it was, 1 hour with Ric Flair. So I would have to say that would probably be one of his best matches because he said to me, people just didn't even know I could do 1 hour. I showed them.
Wow.
That actually happened 3 different times in St. Louis, 1 hour matches.
Wow.
Yeah. Another quick story. When they were shooting that angle for Japan, and we had the Japan photographers over at the fairgrounds. I've told you this before, Barbara. It was another one of those. In a career, you have those high points. And Larry Matisek and I, this is a big hall, and Frank had called Larry and said, "Hey, look," and I had Lou Thez booked on the card for a special guest referee that night. And he said, "Hey, is there any way Herb can get us in that building earlier in the day?" He said, "I'd like to have a little workout with Lou." And so I think they're going to bring their entourage up there. Well, it's a photographer, and it's Larry Matisek and myself sitting in there for about 2.5 hours watching Lou Thez and Bruiser Brody work in the ring. And I mean, it was reversals, it was takedowns, and all this. And I mean, Larry and I, you talk about kid at the candy shop, both of us. It was like, oh my, we were in awe. I look at Larry and his mouth was dropped open, mine. And I'll never forget after they got out of the ring, Lou went over and grabbed a folding chair, pushed it up against the wall, and did 180 push-ups off of that chair.
Whoa.
Now, this is after he's been in the ring 2.5 hours with Frank. And so Frank was back there because we had a show to do that night. And Frank's back there kind of getting dressed out. And Larry says, "What was it like being in there with that old guy?" He says, "Well, let me tell you something. When he gets a hold of that arm, it's not if you're going, it's where you're going." And I'll never forget that. In fact, there's a picture that just showed up on my timeline of them in the ring at the Belle Claire Fairgrounds when we were doing that. And that was in 1986, I think it was.
Yeah, I know. I love that. I love that picture because I know his wife, I think, has that picture too. I have that picture of the
Charlie's got that.
Yeah, Charlie.
Awesome.
Yeah. Great memories.
Sounds like great memories. Very much so. All right, let's talk about next, Barbara. One of my favorite topics. We kind of discussed this a little earlier. What are some of your Bruiser Brody favorite collectibles, yo?
Well, of course, the figures. And I'll show you this. I'm going to get one. This is
I'm gonna bring one of them up, Herb.
Somebody sent me this from. Hang on, let me get it from the Brothers Gator. Take a look.
Oh, it's a pillow buddy. Oh, wow.
Look at the size of it.
Oh my God, yeah, it's a pillow buddy.
It's bigger than me. As you
Awesome.
can see, I'm trying.
That's awesome.
Take a look at that.
I love it. I love it.
And of course, my book. And I have so many different collectibles, but this is one, and Herb knows this one, which a T-shirt was made. This is I should have had this T-shirt on. This.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I think, Herb, you can tell the story on this one too.
That's the one Nick's girlfriend made, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
This was a picture that she painted. It is so real. I mean, this is just a copy, of course.
Right.
The original one is just absolutely incredible.
Awesome.
And he made T-shirts. There's T-shirts. In
Yep.
fact, I just had a photo of Jason, Herb's son.
Yep.
That was
Saturday
a good
night.
photo.
Yeah. He said, Dad, can I wear he called him Mr. Brody. Can I wear Mr. Brody's shirt? I said, sure. I said, I'm sure the fans will love it. And they did. So really great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Where can anybody get one of those art prints?
We have to do some. I'm telling Nick, he's going to have to do
Nick.
something.
I think Nick's going to have some on the May 13th. I think he's going to have them there. Yeah. And I don't know if you can you see that?
Oh, which one is that? Brody or Bruiser?
That's Brody.
That's Brody.
Oh,
Look.
My Belgium Malinois. And
beautiful.
And then I don't know if I've got let's see here. Oh, there they are there. If you can see them, that's Bruiser and Brody.
Look at that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, they
love it.
That's when I got the Brody. Brody's about 12 years old now, I guess he is. And when my wife got him for me, she knew what I was going to call him. So I tell everybody he's with me forever. You know, I just it was my buddy.
That's awesome. I want to bring up the new figure coming out. One figure I just found out about. This one. Look at that figure.
As I said, that's that old one.
Yeah,
that's the old one. That's the old one. Boy, if you haven't seen the new one yet, you wait until you see the new one.
He's got that.
I'm going to show it in a second.
Oh, you got one.
Hold on. I'm going to show you. Oh, wait. Before we show it, go ahead, Barbara.
Show you the picture of the T-shirt.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Take a look at
Wow.
that.
That's an awesome shirt. Let me tell you. I need a shirt like that.
Yeah.
Please let everybody know where they can get it. Share it. I'll share it.
Yeah,
people who are watching.
Nick, we have to get on Nick because he's the one that has them, and I need a contact so that I can put people on. Because a lot of people have asked me, so we need. Because I know.
Well, and Barbara, every time I see somebody out there putting something out there, I call you and say, "Hey, are you familiar with what they're doing?" And
Redbubble? What is that? I checked it out, but I don't know anything about it. Was it Redbubble or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Or Etsy, probably.
Yeah, it was something, yeah.
Yeah, that's other people doing stuff.
And it's the black market.
Yeah, it's the black market. That's right.
Yeah.
Let me pull up that figure from Power Town coming up. Look at that figure.
You talk about, man.
Comes with a belt, the chain.
Realistic.
Oh, good.
Very realistic.
That's realistic. I'm going to be right back. Yeah, that's real. Really
realistic. I mean, down to the scars on the head.
Yeah, look at that. The vest comes off and everything.
Yeah.
And you could change his hands too.
Yes, change his hand? Yeah. Here's I just remember one. Here's another one. This is like a different one that somebody had done. It's a collectible.
Oh, wow. That's a Japanese one.
It's a Japanese, but it's from a thing called Junk Shop Dog from Australia. But it's through the Japanese too. And there's a collectible. And he has another one that's just awesome. Regular. So there's but the one from Powtown. Oops.
Yeah, let me bring it back up.
Yeah, the one from Powtown is
that thing.
To me, and I know Herb will admit too, that is the most realistic one that anybody has ever made. And I'm
very
looking forward to
detailed.
getting one. as I said, I don't even have one yet because I think they should be. I'm hoping that everybody will have them within the next couple of weeks because they're meant to be on the way here. Hopefully they're already here. And then of course they have to go out to everybody that was good enough to do the Kickstarter. But I just think it's wonderful.
Well,
I'm waiting for mine.
Those came out as a pre-order. You can only pre-order.
Right. So that was just a Kickstarter. So nobody has received them yet. So I haven't even got one yet. So I'm waiting myself.
Yeah. Well, you know, Barbara, I told Greg Gagne when I booked him for that May 13th, I said, if we don't have him by the time you get here, we're holding you hostage. Because I know he's got connections there.
Oh, well, he's part of it. Yeah.
I know.
Him with TA, with Magnum.
That's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah, they're both parts. So yeah, he better have. I talk to him too frequently and say, come on, where are they?
Yeah.
They're on their way.
And I mean, and they're going to go like hotcakes. I can tell you, they're just, that is the most realistic picture. Yeah.
If you get extras of them, they're going to go like hotcakes. I mean, you can only order it from the pre-order, and then once they close it, you couldn't order it no more.
No.
So now I got to go to eBay myself to get one.
Yeah.
So exciting. All right, Herb, tell me about, I don't know if this has gone on, but if there was a rib that was played on Brody or one that Brody played on someone.
Oh, tons of ones that he would play, but he knew, and he could do them to anybody, but
okay, who's gonna mess with him?
Not too many guys. You know, when you had guys like him, and I mean, well, yeah, statute of limitations is over with. So
that's right.
But we were, and it was his idea. At least I'm going to say that. But we were in a van coming from a show in Centralia, Illinois. Mm-hmm. And it was, we had a gentleman driving the van by the name of, the wrestling name was Bull Brannigan. And I was in the front seat. Bruiser Brody, Crusher Blackwell, and Larry Matisek was in the back. Blackwell was in the far back of the van. Uh-huh. And Barry and Frank were sitting there. And Frank kept on messing with Brannigan driving, tickling his ear, and he, what are you doing that for? He said, because I don't want you to fall asleep. And I was in the shotgun passenger seat, and I thought, well, man, and I noticed the van was kind of weaving and all of that, and Frank was sitting right behind me, and he'd reach over and he'd tickle him in the ear, thump him on the earlobe. And sure enough, Bull was falling asleep, and he wouldn't let nobody drive.
Oh man! And
of course, at that time, I carried a little .38 snub nose revolver, and Frank knew that, especially when we were out on the road. And Bull's driving that van down the road, and he almost ran into the back of an 18-wheeler. And Frank says, he leans up and he's whispering in my ear. He says, "You got your stuff with you?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Shoot a shot out that window."
Oh no!
I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" So I said, so I start to roll my window down. He said, "No, out his window," because he had his window down. He rolled his window down trying to stay awake.
Oh.
And so and he starts pushing the seat, and I'm, "No, Frank, I'm not going to do it." And Larry's laughing his butt off, and he said, "No, go ahead." He said, "Either that or he's going to kill us." And I'm thinking, well, I better, because if I don't do that, Frank's going to kill him.
That's right.
I took that gun and right in front of him, I shoot that. And what's he do? He about runs off the road. I mean, messes in his pants. And of course, that gun goes off inside that van. We're all holding our ears, and he finally pulls off in the medium, and I'm shaking. I'm, what the hell? And Frank is sitting in the van just laughing his butt off. And he said, "Bull, I bet you don't fall asleep again." Yes,
that's right.
Drove all the way back to St. Louis. He never did fall asleep.
Wide awake.
But
wide awake.
When you had guys, and there was times it'd be him, Murdoch, Greg Valentine, we'd all be together, Bob Orton. But they were so fun to be with, and just to hear the stories and the ribs that they would pull on them, because those were some guys that did a lot of the ribbing, but nobody wanted to pull the ribs on them. So yeah, but But God rest Bull. I think Bull may be gone by now, but if he's not, he'd tell you that same story.
Darla says, OMG, I never heard that story. I can just see Bull scared to death.
Oh, she knew Bull. Yeah, she knew Bull. Yeah.
We had another comment.
There's not too many in this business that Darla don't know.
Before we get to Barbara, because Barbara's got to tell us something, I want to bring this comment up. Would there be a reopening for the Brody Lounge in the coming year?
Nah, I don't think so. Those days are long gone.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Bull is deceased.
Oh, yeah. Hate to hear that.
Yeah. All right, Barbara. What do you got for us?
What do you got for me? I could tell you all sorts of things.
Let's talk about the book. If you could bring the book back up.
Oops, behind me.
Right behind you. Yeah.
Now, this was something that I never thought that I would ever do. What it was is somebody had already approached me and Larry, I think, to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when they approached me, I said, I'm not going to write a book. I'm not a writer. And people usually write books, and a lot of it is embellished or it's not completely true, and there's nobody that can really tell the truth. And then Larry said to me, why don't you and me write a book? You can write the personal side. I will write the wrestling side. And I thought about it, and I said, this will be something that could be truthful. This would be a book that tells the truth. There's no fiction in it. It's a true story.
Right.
And I agreed to write it with him. So I was really happy with the way it turned out. And just, as I said, I tell people, and you can say as many stories as you like, but when you tell the truth, you never have to worry about trying to remember something that's not quite true, because the truth is easy to say because it's part of your life, and it's not like somebody trying to embellish a story or anything. And that's like, too, I was so happy. And like I said, there's very few people that you get to an age that you can trust 100%. Well, Larry, Herb, I can trust them 100%. And a few, like Darla is another person. Pam, there's, several people that are, friends for life. So I did, and I think it really turned out good. And it's like I tell people, you just read it. That's the story of my life, how it really happened. I don't know sometimes. And you know what it was? It was so, I think, good, healthy, because not to go in what happened, but I went through such a dramatic situation that I just closed down, totally closed down. It was like it happened to somebody. It wasn't me, you blank. Sometimes when you go through, things in life, you blank out, you just become numb. So I think after everything, I kind of just became numb and just, stayed away, except for Herb and that, of the wrestling, and kind of just, looked after my son till he was, he was only 7. So kind of just, we lived in the country. And then after when Larry said that, just writing everything down was so healthy. It was still like writing in the third person. I said, I lived through this. I cannot believe, that I actually lived through this, but it was healthy. Just writing, writing what happened down. And now, like I said, it still is that, but it doesn't affect me. Like, it's healthy now, because in life, no matter what happens, we have to always take one step in front of the other, because so many people are going along their lives, everything is great, and then all of a sudden they hit a blank wall. Mm-hmm. There's no going on. You have to know you've got to make a turn. There's a change. I mean, change happens to everybody in life. Absolutely. And some good, some bad, but and it was like, you just have to take one step in front of the other. You can't live in the past either. And I know some people that things have happened to them and they're still in that past. They've never progressed on. Well, that's not what the person would want either. They would want you to
Right.
have a life and want you to be, whole. You're not ever going to be whole. Doesn't matter who you lose and what. There's always a little
Right.
part there that's
A little
always,
piece, right?
there's a little piece always in your heart. You're always going to have, whether it's your parents, your spouse, your
Right.
children, your pet. I just lost one of my pets. So yeah, we're
Oh.
pet, and it's all a little bit,
Yeah.
For me, it was my brother.
yeah,
But Barbara, there's that picture we were talking about.
there you go. That's a great picture. But I don't think I've seen it in color.
Yeah.
Because I think the one I saw was in black and white. That's a great
Oh,
picture.
wow.
Yep. Luthez and our man right there.
Oh,
Yeah.
Where can we get the book, Barbara?
you can message me. I've got a few copies there.
Okay. I thought you were going to say like Amazon or something.
Yeah, it is on Amazon. But
It's on Amazon, yeah.
But if you get it through me, I can sign it.
There you go.
It can be personally signed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a great book. I mean, if you want to hear it, as Barbara said at the beginning, there's been other people out there who embellish and think they know the stories. But I remember when Larry was talking to Barbara about being able to tell what she knew Frank. It was kind of like, Barbara, what we've talked about before, when you could see the transformation of Frank when you would drop him off at the airport. You could see the Frank who was the husband, the father, and then the minute he walked through those airport doors, it was Bruiser Brody. And then the same way when he come back, and we used to be able to see that when we would be with him, when we'd go out to eat or whatever after a show. Totally different than it was about taking business, and the thing is Frank loved the kids. Remember, Barbara, the show, the only show ever produced at the fabulous Fox Theater in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, yes.
Larry and I and Sam did that, and Frank did a talk that afternoon before the show with the large group of Boy Scouts. And got down right to their level, come off the stage, and he loved those kids, and I think he had future plans, didn't he, Barbara?
He did, yes, because what it was, he was beginning. He was in his 40s, 42, but just before that, getting in his 40s, and he knew that what he did in the ring, he would not be able to do for very much longer, because he gave all. His body was getting to be wrecked, like a lot of the wrestlers are now, because he did things that I don't even understand. He did things that I couldn't do. I couldn't even lift my leg that high. So, and the bumps that he took, and this came too from starting off in football. Football, if you're a football player out there, you're getting beat up too. That's why I think a lot of football players go into wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
So he was already thinking. So he had started a corporation called BAM, Brody Athletic Management. And he'd hooked up with a professor from the University of Texas in San Antonio. And what they were going to do is they were going to do a skit, like take a wrestling ring, with permission from the schools and everything, take a wrestling ring, set it up in the schools, and they would do a skit. Frank would do a skit on the DARE. The DARE program it was a drug program they have in the schools to try to, get the kids, But with, most younger people, if somebody from authority is talking to them, they kind of tune them out. Where if you get somebody like Frank that's doing a program about something that's very important, I think they would listen. I think
they'd pay attention.
I think they would have listened. And we also he'd bought a little piece of property with and what he was going to do in the property, it was 45 acres. We were going to do a school on the school holidays. He was going to go and get, especially boys from unfortunate situations, and have a little camp out on the property, and a camp out on the property, because sometimes all it takes for a youth, if they know that someone cares about them, it can change lives. And he had planned, like as Herb had just said, about how he was doing it with kids. This is what he had planned to do. But of course, as we know, it didn't really eventuate. But he had all these plans that he was going to do, was to help young boys. And I think, it's a shame, because I think he probably could have helped quite a few people.
Well, and he had connections in the right places, and I mean,
Yes.
there was times that him and Larry and I had in-depth talks about that future business, and he was really excited about it, and he had the right people in the right places getting ready to help, and just to be able to say, hey, because if Frank was going to take the plunge and do something, you knew it was going to work, because he was not going to let it fail. And as Barb said, I mean, it was it wasn't just a dream he had. It was a reality that he was going to make happen. I mean, up until that weekend before, as I've told Barbara before, when we were sitting in my place, we had in-depth talks about it, and it was just sad. And but we're going to keep him going.
That's right.
Because he'd already bought a wrestling ring from Joe Blanchard, who was the promoter in San Antonio at the time. So he was all set up to go. Already getting permission from, because to do anything like that, you got to have permission from the school districts and everything like that. But having this professor from the university, they're already writing a little show and everything. So, like Herb said, he had the right people, and if he set his mind to anything, I have no doubt it would be successful.
Yep.
Absolutely. Now I got on my Bruiser Brody shirt.
I know. Look at that shirt.
Look at that shirt.
Yes.
Only available from Pro Wrestling Crate, a previous crate that came out a few months ago. But there's a Pro Wrestling Tees store where you can get Bruiser Brody shirts.
And they are good.
So I don't have to hunt them down.
No. They're good.
You just go to ProWrestlingTees.com, type in Bruiser Brody, and there you go. There's the store.
They were one of the first people that actually, came and got permission.
Well, good.
Not like all the bootleggers.
Well, and that's because, as I said, when I see something show up on the internet, the first thing I do is call Barbara and say, are you familiar with these folks? And because it's not right, and usually I can get a nasty email to them, or I have my attorney send a letter, and that takes care of all of it.
With Pro Wrestling Tees, all independent wrestlers use that to sell their merch, so it goes directly to the wrestlers.
That's great.
So, and they're partnered with AEW as well.
Oh,
so they sell all their shirts through them. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did that. That was one of the last show. One of the few shows I've seen was the AEW. They were this was when Cody Rhodes was took over. They had one of their first matches, or their first shows, was in Daytona Beach, and so I lived not that far from there. So I had talked to someone, and then Jim Ross gave me tickets. He was announcing with the AEW back and then, so he had gave us tickets. So I went. First time I ever sat in the front row. It was like they were front row tickets. I said, thanks, Jim. It was kind of a little weird sitting in the front row, but that's how I know that the difference between the old school and the new school, because they're fantastic athletes, but I didn't see any story, and it reminded me of Circus du Soleil, because there was just they were somersaulting and going up there and many somersaults and out of the ring. Somersaulting.
You didn't see no Atelicons or Gary Jacksons or
no.
Or Big Texans or anybody like that, huh?
Young, fit guys, good-looking guys doing somersaults.
That's awesome. Yeah, Jim Ross is still with them.
Yeah.
Jim Ross, JR. Yeah, JR.
The slobber knocker. Yeah.
That's right. It's a slobber knocker. Well, we've had a slobber knocker here tonight, and I would like to thank you guys for coming on the podcast. Appreciate it. Herb, what else you got going on?
Well, we're busy with wrestling. It's I have a full-time job and a lot of other things I do, but my passion is the wrestling, and it will be until I don't wear the boots, so I won't take them off. But 50 years is a long time. I've got the greatest locker room of talent. I got some guys in my locker room that was trained by Harley Race. Gary Jackson got his nickname the Night Train by Bruiser Brody years ago. These are all people that Barbara know and love, and they love her. But we have just had a show this last weekend, a great crowd, and it was kind of ironic. We went back to one of the first places I took Bruiser Brody at the fairgrounds, and the fans showed up and showed out, as we say. And so I've signed the contract for the rest of the year there at that place. But right now we're doing a big show in March for the Shriners organization at their beautiful temple in East St. Louis. But we're all working towards May 13th, trying to get the word out. Hopefully the fans will show up. And with Barbara being there, I know they're all going to come up to see her, and Darla. And we haven't even announced, other than a few of the names that's going to enter into the Battle Royal, we haven't announced the rest of the card yet. So, I mean, I've got an idea what it's going to be, but I can't let the cat out of the bag right now. But when I do, you can bet it's going to have a St. Louis flavor to it.
Awesome. Barbara, any last words for everybody?
No, I just want to, anyone listening to this, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much for still remembering Frank Bruiser Brody. I mean, it's an honor to the family that he is remembered and still talked about, and people still bring me out. And it's like, as Herb knows, it's like I found my wrestling family through Herb, and that I found my wrestling family. And it's just, it's just incredible.
I truly believe he will never be forgotten. Absolutely not.
Well, as I've told Barbara before, as long as I've got breath left in me, that will never happen. And of course, my sons and my daughter and everybody, because what we do is family, as Barbara can tell you, it's from the concession stands on down and taking the tickets at the door. And my kids grew up helping with the ring and being the ring boys, and they all love Bruiser, and so we're gonna keep it going.
That's right. Chris, you made it late to the party, but there's some great stories. You definitely want to go back and rewatch it. Make sure you subscribe.
Hey, Chris.
Chris is you talk about a guy that's got stories, man. I'm going to tell you. Yeah.
We need to get Chris on the show.
We love Chris. Yeah, you need to get Chris on the show. You can talk about Andre. He'll tell you things about Andre you've never heard before.
All right, Chris. Just email me, get in touch with me.
Yeah, hey, Chris.
Chris is going to try to make it in on May 13th.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Can't wait. Thanks to everyone. Yeah. He texted me the other day and said, "Hey, can I come and set my display up?" Because when he's up at Waterloo, Iowa all the time, and it's just great. He's got that big display, and I think it add a flavor to it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for coming on the show. Please,
very good.
Tell everybody where they can follow you.
Hey,
best is
go ahead, Barbara.
Go ahead, Barbara.
One last thing. Did you watch Dark Side of the Ring?
Oh,
of course I did.
Yes, you got to.
I've watched it like 5 times already. I just rewatched it again because I knew you were going to be on. I'm like,
okay.
Wow, that actually catapulted that whole show.
That
story.
That's what happened. Just real quick. I don't know how much time you got, but that was real quick
we got time.
Because when Jason and Evan, Evan is the producer. He called me, and before it was nothing. Sorry, it was nothing. Right. And he said, "We would like to do a pilot. We don't know how it's going to go, but we'd like to do a pilot on Frank." And I had to think about it. And I thought, well, as long as I'm part of it, said, yes, you'll be part of it. Right. So you'll have nothing. Well, that's okay. I'll have some input that, because this was a touchy subject. This is the first time that's kind of been out there with the subject. Right, I went, that's great. So yes, he still contacts me because that just catapulted him into 3-4 seasons now. Right. And that was the pilot. There was nothing else in the works except for that. And the producers of Vice, they liked it so much that they signed it up for it. And as we know what happened, we have all these Dark Side of the Rings, and I think it has the Territories or something.
Yes, Tales from the Territories is the other show. And that one is also produced by The Rock. Dwayne
Oh,
Johnson.
I remembered, Barb, when Evan we first started talking with him about that, and so it was great.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I'm glad you brought that up.
and one thing too, that's the first time which I was shocked that my son Jeff has ever done anything,
Wow.
because they were kind of his age and we all got along really good. They were such nice people.
Mhm.
And we're sitting there and they're interviewing me, and Jeff's sitting there because it was done in Austin. So I was
Right.
staying with Jeff, and they said to Jeff, would you mind saying a few words? And of course, and I was blown away because I hadn't, he won't, he kind of, he stays away from everything. I think he was 7 years old, and I think he has a little blame on what happened because he doesn't, have a father. But I was blown away. And what really got me was when they said, what kind of memories, do you have memories of him? And he kind of said, everybody else has memories but me, that he
Right.
was too young
Too
to
young.
have. But I was so grateful. Like I said to Evan, I said, I think it's good now. Now he can talk about his father. Now he's at the age that he realizes just who his father is, and just how important people still admire his dad. So I think that gave him, as I said, I was so grateful with. Thank you, Dark Side of the Ring. Thank you, Evan and Jason.
Yes.
Now,
Great.
Barbara, did you know that they did a extended edition of it?
Yes, I watched
Yeah,
the
okay.
extended.
All
Yeah,
right.
I did watch the extended edition. It was pretty much the same, and that goes into what Herb was.
Confidential, right?
Yeah, Dark Side Confidential. So yeah, they have done great. So it worked out
Absolutely.
really good.
Absolutely.
I think a couple of things might have been a little embellished. Nothing bad.
It's always
Okay.
yeah. I picked out a few things, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
That's okay.
We'll set the story straight on the next one we do.
There you go.
If you know what I mean, Barbara.
I do know what you mean.
I know what you
Okay.
know.
Okay. Let me know one day when you're ready to let it out. All right, Herb, where can we follow you?
The best way is on Facebook. They can reach me on with Herb Simmons. I'm the easiest guy on Facebook. A few years ago I couldn't say Facebook, and now they say I live on it. But I keep saying I will until they start charging for it. They start charging, I'm going. SICW.org is the place to go to look at the package deals for the May 13th. But the best way is, and we do a TV, little and social media show every Sunday night at 8 p.m. on YouTube. We're on Roku. We're on a little TV station out of St. Louis, Intrigue Paranormal TV. So, like I said, the best way is just Herb Simmons. Hit me up, and you'll see everything I post.
Okay, awesome. Barbara, what about yourself? Where can anybody follow you?
I'm Barbara Goodish, of course, on Facebook. And as I said, friend me and send me a message and tell me, especially if you saw this program or that, I'd love to hear from you. Just
Absolutely.
message me so I can get it, or friend me and send me a message. And I said, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, and the other thing is any of I know these other promoters around the country watch your show, and you're getting a good following. So if
a little bit,
hit Barbara up, and if you're if you're an honest promoter out there that wants to bring somebody in, Barbara will entertain that. But just to bring her in, I think people, the fans in whatever area you're in, would love to hear her stories and what her husband meant to the business. I mean, I know a lot of promoters across this country, and I know you've visited quite a few of them. So Cauliflower Alley, here we come, maybe.
Yeah, that's it. And there's also Marty, and he has a show in Charlotte every August, who brings me in, and I take my books there and I sell, and it's a really good one. And Tommy up in New Jersey, Tommy Ferreira, he takes me in and lets me sell my books and that, and very nice. There are a couple of, and they're great for the fans out there. There's a New Jersey one. He usually has that one. I think it's in July, but it'll be on my page. And also, I know the August one is in Charlotte, North Carolina. And of course, hey, Vegas, baby. Cauliflower
August.
Alley Club in August. Hey, Darla, Get your shoes on.
And Pam, yeah.
And Pam and Darla.
Thank you very much for being on the show. I appreciate you coming on. Thank you to the chat, everybody in the chat. Make sure you go to Pro Wrestling Tees and get your Bruiser Brody shirts.
There you
Of course.
go.
Of course. And that Power Town figure, you're going to have to go to eBay or maybe some shows and we could get
Don't
one.
forget
And
the book.
I was going to go. I wasn't going to forget the book.
Ooh.
Available on Amazon. If you have Prime, it's free shipping. Just saying.
Hey, no, and you get signed. Message me and
Oh,
I've
you
got
message
something.
Barbara.
Hey,
She'll
hey,
sign
hey,
it for
hey,
you.
message
Absolutely.
me. Sal, and
Absolutely.
you get a personal notification, a personal signed book.
Darla's ready for Vegas.
Yeah. And as I said, once again, thank you everybody, and thank you for having
you,
me
everybody.
on here. I really appreciate it, Papa.
Thank you.
Love you, baby.
Make sure you guys are subscribing. Please, my guests, don't leave. We're going to end the broadcast, but I want to just say a quick word to you guys after.
Sure.
All right, guys. Have a good night. Stay tuned. I will be back with more episodes of Beyond the Barricade tomorrow night. Remember, this is Psycho Month for Papa Dank, so you never know who's going to show up.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Darla. Thank you for being in the chat. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a good night,